Hi, I'm Lynn.
And hi, I'm Leslie.
And we're here today to introduce you to the Go Big Double Wedding Ring die.
Another great big die.
Yes, and this is a bob. It's a block on board, so it has all the pieces that you need on one die board to create this wonderful traditional block.
And have you made a wedding ring quilt before?
No. I need to though, but and I absolutely will now that we've got this new Go Big die. Yes, I'm a little bit afraid of the curves.
Which is pretty traditionally normal of most quilters. A wedding ring quilt is not usually an easy one to construct. So.
Right, but I am confident that you're going to teach me some
bet.
things here, and then I will be well on my way to making
And then
this.
with the precise cut shapes and notches, it's going to be really easy. You'll be amazed.
Okay, so I'm excited. Let's get started. Right here in front of us, we have, this is the pattern that comes in the die. It's called the Classic Double Wedding Ring Table Runner. And if we added a few more blocks,
We could be a bed runner.
Absolutely. So let's show you how to use this, this die and what are some tips and tricks with cutting with it. So this is Leslie's tip. If you take Post-it notes with, there are letters attributed to each of the shapes in the pattern. So if you take those and add them to the shapes inside of the cuts, that's an easy way to remember which one's which.
Right, especially when you need multiple sizes of some and only singles of some.
Right, and you said that you do this.
I do this with all of my dies.
So I think that's a great idea. And this die, you're going to definitely want to make sure that you keep your lengthwise grain in mind as you're cutting. So if you do still have your salvage edge on your fabric, just keep the salvage edge facing you, so facing your belly button or however you can remember that. And that will ensure that the strongest part of your fabric or the lengthwise grain is running the length of the cutter. It's running as it goes under the roller. So we're just going to cover the shape.
And that's really important on this type of shape because we're going to be working with curved shapes.
Correct, yeah. We want to make sure that we get the most accurate cut.
And get the grain lines right.
So, and with this die, you can cut up to 6 layers of cotton fabric. And with the 3 shapes here, depending on if you're making a scrappy double wedding ring or
More traditionally organized or balanced.
correct.
Opposites.
You can layer your 6 layers of fabric into strips. That's the way that this is laid out on the die board. Or you can cut them individually if you need, because you don't need the same number of each shape. So we're just going to do that here. And use your two-tone foam on the die board so that you can ensure that you've got all of your shapes covered. And then we put our mat on top. And because this is the Go Big electric cutter, you want to make sure that you remember we've got to turn it on. And I think I forgot to mention that the Go Big dies are compatible with the Go Big electric cutter. So then we just get it started. And
it's just amazing how fast it can cut out all of these shapes for us, which would take us traditionally a long time to do. And another reason a lot of us don't attempt the wedding ring.
Correct. And then the other thing about the Go Big that I wanted to mention is that as it's going through, you can be getting another die ready over here and just keep really an assembly line type styling and make the cutting go that much faster.
Let's pull it off and just show them what the pieces look like.
Okay, so we've got all these wonderful pieces here.
So we have our center piece.
Center.
And then
The football shape.
The football shape.
Which is C.
Or I refer to it as a melon. Football, I could see it
melon,
too.
Either way. And then we've got our other pieces here that make up the arc.
So in our arc pieces, there's basically 2 shapes, our square and then a slightly angled rectangle, and then we have our square corners. So I'm going to lay out, these are basically my corners of my arc, and I'm going to have multiple of these inside. And here we chose to arrange a color palette to it, so from dark to lights or dark lights to dark. You can play with that. It can be totally scrappy too. And so I'm just going to line these up. And so I'm going to need 2 arcs around my melon, so I'm going to do 2 sets. And to sew them together, the notches are already right there, it works really great. I just take my 2 pieces, put them together, line up that notch and edges, and sew right across there.
And you already have the 1/4 inch seam allowance is factored in, so.
So they're going to just line right up. So I'm going to create 2 arcs and sewing them together. And on my second arc, I want to add my corners. So again, they're notched. I'm just going to line up that notch to my end piece and sew across. And so I will have one, just turn this under, that will look like this, and one piece that looks like this. Okay? Now there is a little trick to having this work successfully.
Okay,
and
let's
sewing
hear it.
them, and that comes to the sewing part. And one of the things, we have it in the directions, just to remind you, but it's really important to do, and that is to mark your 1/4" seams allowance. And I like, on my melon, I actually like to draw a line so that I can sew into that 1/4" and adjust to make sure I hit that point just where I would like it to be. And then on each of my arcs, I want to also mark my 1/4". So you can see I've got it marked right here. And I would have it marked here. I'm not sure that shows on the camera, but and then here and here. So I'm going to do that on both of these. So on this edge, I've marked on both ends that 1/4", because that's really the key. It's a little bit of a set-in seam, so we don't want to sew past the 1/4".
Okay.
Okay? So I'm going to take my arc and line it right up with that melon. And I like to actually take my pin, and it's called pin stab. So I'm going to put it right into the corner there and have it come right at my 1/4" right here. And that is where I'm actually going to start sewing. My next pin is going to be in the center where the notches line up. So I'm going to pin right there. And then I'm going to do that pin stab thing again on the other end. So I'm just going to mark right here and stick it through right there. Okay. Now when I go to the machine, when you're sewing curves, that's one of the other tricks too, is I refer to them as you got to have a little faith, which goes right with the wedding ring. Because things don't always line up nice and square like a straight seam does.
Right.
So I have to have faith that when I go around with the machine, these are going to line up. So you just worry about where you're sewing right now and adjust as you come around with your presser foot of your machine. So I'm going to start my needle stitching right here at this 1/4" mark where I've got my pin, and I'm going to gently, carefully sew around, easing, and stop right here. I don't want to do a stitch past that mark. And that's the key. If I sew off the edge, I'm going to have trouble assembling things down the line.
Okay.
Okay? And so once I've sewn that, I'd like to give it a little pressing. And in this case, the arc wants to press towards my melon, so I'm just going to let it do that because it would be too much of a fighting to press it this way.
Okay.
And that will work great. Okay? So now we have this assembled. We're ready then to create our other half, and that is to attach this part. Okay? So I'm going to have just one more thing to line up here.
I'm going to move this out of the way
Perfect.
for you.
Okay, so I'm going to pin stab again. I'm going to put right into my point right here and right into my intersection there. Okay, and line that up. Now there's one more intersection that's really important that I want to make sure matches, and this might be easy to mark as well, your 1/4" right here. Most quilters can see that a little bit, but I'm going to mark my 1/4" here, and there's my 1/4" there. And that's important to make sure I get my nice intersection where those are going to line up like that.
Oh, okay. That
Okay?
makes sense.
So it's kind of like matching a seam. And here I have a seam where my center, and I have a center notch there. So I'm going to line that part up and pin. Okay? And then we're going to do the same thing on this corner with my edge right here, 1/4". And it should be on my 1/4" mark right there, so I'm pin stabbing again and lining up. And then I'm going to bring it around and do that 1/4" right there and pin stab through both. Okay? And then again, when I go to sew now, I'm going to have faith. So I'm going to start right here, and I'm going to gently sew across, making sure I stay true to my 1/4" seam, because if I go too deep or not wide enough, the seam allowances won't come out right. And I'm going to sew across. Some people find it easier to have the concave on top, and some find it easier to have it on the bottom. Just play with that. That depends on your machine and your ability of moving things through what you're comfortable with.
Okay.
So I like it to have the more bulk on the bottom because my feed dogs automatically ease more for the machine, and so they help me to ease that excess in.
Okay, great.
All right.
And then the next part is sewing, right? You'll
Yep.
put this part on.
Yep. So once we have that, let me pull out some pins so
Okay.
it lays flat. And remember on our corners here, we didn't do all the way to the edge. So we have our melon in here now. We're going to line that up. And so it's going to go around here. There we go. It looks like that. So when I sew my center on, I also want to stop right at that 1/4",
Okay.
so that my different units will piece together.
Wow, great tips. Thanks for walking us through that.
It's not so
because-
scary now,
no,
right?
No, I'm ready. I'm going to start. I'm going to start today. So this is wonderful. I'm excited, and I hope everyone else out there is as well. This is a really wonderful quilt to create. And you can find patterns like this and many more at AccuQuilt.com. And plus get inspired at our blog and on our Quilter Spotlight on our site.
And join us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and what am I forgetting?
Pinterest?
Pinterest, yes, for more inspiration and ideas.
With AccuQuilt, you cut time.
So you can quilt more.